Welcome to another episode of the Mortgage Pro podcast. I even forgot my own podcast name then. Today we're interviewing Catherine Morgan, who is a multi-award-winning financial planner and financial coach, podcaster, social media guru, marketing expert, public speaker. So we're just going to have a little bit of chat about your story. How you doing, Catherine?
Yeah, really great. Thank you. Thanks for asking.
Good. I like your decor in the background there.
Thank you. It's very on brand, isn't it? Serendipitously. Well, I think it's odd that literally a week before we all now are home workers, I ordered a brand new desk. So my old desk has now gone into the lounge for my children. Now we're having to home educate them.
We are in the midst of Corona if you're watching this later. So
we're all home workers now. I mean, I've been home working for 2 years now, so it's no change for me. But a bit serendipity really that I had all this new setup with my desk, etc. When I just needed it. So always good.
Yeah, nice. So for those of you who can't see, because you're listening to this on the podcast, it's a lovely pink. What do they call those flowers? They're not flowers, are they, or leaves?
Feathers.
Feathers. There you go. Clueless. See, I'm a typical man. Nice pink feathers in the background with a little CM logo, which very on brand and looks fantastic. So you said there actually one thing to pick up on straight away. You said that you've been working at home for 2 years now. Were you in an office prior to that?
So prior to that, for 2 years, I was a kind of on a contract basis. I was going into a local financial advice practice. And then prior to that, I was working in the banks for 16 years.
Right. Okay. So you transitioned from kind of office worker to home worker. Was that the beginning of your self-employed journey 2 years ago?
No, my very first, the very start of my self-employed journey was way back in like 2010. So at that particular moment, I've been working in the bank since I was 18. And in 2010, I had a complete light bulb moment in my life that completely turned around the whole direction of my life. And it led me on to perhaps I can share that with you in a moment, but it led me on to create my first business, which was actually running a personal styling business. So I would help women to understand what they should be wearing for their body shape, what colours they should be wearing to improve their own self-confidence and self-worth with themselves.
Yeah, got it. Okay, so take us back then. Let's go back to the beginning now. I was intrigued just by that little point to see where we got to. So that'll probably come to light as we go through. So you went straight into a bank from college or university?
Yeah, so I came out of college. I had a place at uni to study law and had a boyfriend at the time that didn't want me to go to university. And I thought, right, I'll take a year out. And at that moment, actually, my twin brother had, the year before, had emigrated out to Australia with my dad, who had gone out the year before. And so I was a little bit unsure as to whether I was going to be emigrating to Australia or staying in the UK. And because I had my boyfriend at the time, we got engaged at 16. Like, it's crazy to look back at this now. But at that time, I had a place to do law. Wasn't sure that's what I wanted to do. I think typically a lot of children come out of secondary school and college not really knowing what they should be doing. And I was one of those people. And so I just got a job as a cashier in the bank. That my sister worked at the bank, and I thought, well, I'll just start earning a bit of money. I wanted to move out of the house. So I got my first house. And then I just got into that whole cycle, which a lot of people in financial services do, where we don't choose it as a profession, we just fall into it as a profession. And I was a cashier for about a year. And actually, so at that age, I was 19 and I was working for the Halifax. And I worked predominantly over the weekend, Saturdays and Sundays. And I remember this job came up to be a mortgage advisor. And I went to my boss and said, I really want to do this. I'll study in my own time to do the qualifications, the CMAP qualifications. And it had to go to this committee board because I was only 19. And they declined me. They declined me to get that job because of my age. Like, that seems crazy to say that now. And I was like, right, okay, well, if you're not going to let me progress, because I was always very passionate about progressing, always self-motivated to progress. And so I left Halifax and then went to work for Abbey National, who obviously are now Santander.
Yep.
But yeah, that was my kind of early journey into the banking financial sector. I didn't choose it. I just fell into it.
The same. I did pension review straight after school and college, and had temporary contracts, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I said to my dad, what should I do? And he was like, go and work for a bank. Same thing, cashier for a couple of weeks. I was good at getting people over to account opening, straight in mortgage advisor opportunity, and hey presto. But similarly to you, when I was 19, I went to, no, I probably would have been older than 19, 2003. So 22. So about 23, I went to apply for a job at Alexander Hall in the centre of London. But at that age, I was gold chains and gold rings and proper Essex boy.
You still are, Gary.
I am an Essex boy, but I don't do the gold anymore. But yeah, it was. I unsurprisingly didn't get the job, but then later did. So yeah, so it's funny how you fall into these things, isn't it? Without a shadow of a doubt. And once you're in, you obviously can't get out, but your journey's progressed. So where did you go after that?
Yeah, so I moved over to Abbey National, and because I was new into the company, they wouldn't put me onto the mortgage program straight away. I had to kind of prove my worth first. So I was then put into a staff branch. So I live in Milton Keynes on the outskirts, and Milton Keynes has their head office operation. So I was put into their staff branch. So I was there to help staff with their current accounts, credit cards, loans, all of those sorts of things. So in that time, I then self-studied, did my CMAP qualifications, which is a qualification for mortgage advice practice. And then I got my first job being a mortgage advisor. And I did that for a couple of years. That's when I met my partner. My partner was on the graduate scheme. It was literally love at first sight. He walked into the office. I'd just come back from holiday. I was lovely and brown and looking very nice. And he split up with his girlfriend. And then that was the start of our story. So a very incestuous place, banking, very incestuous place. So, yeah, and then I was moved to a different branch, different location, worked in a little kind of market town for a couple of years, was working predominantly with retired clients. So I then progressed and did all my financial advisor qualifications, and that was around 2001. This was around kind of the time of September the 11th. I remember actually being at home studying for my exams when 9/11 happened.
Crazy.
Which was always one of those, I think everyone remembers where they were at that moment in time.
I was in a bar drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning in Faliraki on a lad's holiday. So yes, we do remember.
So perhaps not remember all of it, but some of it. But yeah, I vividly remember that happening. And then I was an investment advisor for a number of years and just got really frustrated. This was the start of my kind of the pattern of not feeling that something was quite right in what I was doing. Oh, you know, I was enjoying it. I was progressing really quickly. I was earning good money. But it got to kind of 2006, 2007. My husband and I did a charity trek in the Andes, and he proposed to me out there. And at that point, I was like, we need to do something different. This is just too boring. And so I actually got a job out in the Channel Islands, and we moved everything over, just him and I at the time, moved over to Jersey and lived out in Jersey for 5 years. And I went over as an IFA, but then very quickly got poached to go and be a sales manager. So I then managed a team of financial advisors over in the Channel Islands for 4 years. We got married over there. I had my first son over there. And it was literally in 2006 or 2008, one of those years. And I was on my way to work. I was walking along the beach, walking into the town centre of Jersey, beautiful, beautiful islands. And I walked into this coffee shop, and on the stand in front of me was a leaflet. And this leaflet was about personal styling. And I battled for years. So I was in my kind of mid to late 20s at this point. I battled for years in my teenage years over eating disorders, real lack of confidence in my body, and caused me some significant problems in my teenage years. And as I walked into the shop, I picked up this leaflet and thought, I would love for somebody to help me to understand what I should be wearing, what colours I should be wearing to make me just feel better about myself. And I'd pushed this emotion down for quite some years. And the consequences for me was I had a really bad relationship with money. So even though I was recommending and giving other people advice on what they should be doing with their money, I wasn't doing any of it for myself, because as soon as I got paid, I would have already have spent it on clothes. Because the feeling for me was that if I bought more clothes, I'd feel better about myself and I'd have more self-worth, which obviously that didn't work because I was just filling a big, big void. And so I picked up this leaflet and I went home that evening and I said to my husband, I'd love to have this for my birthday. And so he did. He bought me this gift vouchers. Lady came to my house. She weeded out all of my 6 wardrobes worth of clothes. And I'll never forget that one evening that she left me sitting on my red couch. We're living in this little country parish in Jersey. They call them parishes. And it was pitch black outside. I sat down on this red couch and I had about 8 bin bags of clothes around me, like charity piles and eBay piles and things like that. And I just cried my eyes out. And it was like someone had finally given me permission to get rid of all of the stuff I'd been hoarding for so many years in the attempt that it would make me feel better about myself. And that was the kind of the start of my journey, my own personal journey in helping myself to feel better about stuff that I was pushing to one side of things that had happened in my childhood. And actually then rose the entrepreneurial side of me of looking at, well, if I can feel this significant change, I want to help other women to feel the same. And so I flew over this lady who trained the personal stylist that had just done this session with me. She lived with us for a couple of weeks and I went through this pretty intense training program. I then found out I was pregnant. So I was trying to manage this while I was feeling pretty rough. And that was the start of my first entrepreneurial journey. So I then built a business around my job as almost like a side hustle, so to speak. And I set up a little area in my house and I would invite women to do consultations. And I did that for a number of years while still working at the bank. And then when we got married and I had my first child, I then went to work part-time in the bank. So I was doing 3 days at the bank, 2 days at home with my little one. And then I would do weekends in my personal styling business. And that then progressed on 2 years later to then develop my second business, which was actually then selling giftware and jewelry and scarves and things that I was actually using in my personal styling consultations anyway. And I then built an online business. I built an online gift business, went out to all the wholesale trade fairs and learned how to buy my own product range and how to market that and how to build a website, how to take photographs of products. My dad actually very fortunately was in the retail business in Australia. So he gave me a whole ton of advice on what to do and, you know, how to get those relationships with retailers and wholesalers. And that was my second business, which I then sold in 2013. So it was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey, but it was also the start of a very significant time in my life where I started to create a lot of personal change and transformation. And that then led on to actually, for me to question the work that I was actually doing in the financial services sector.
Wow. It's one hell of a journey without a shadow of a doubt, but it also shows a massive experience, which now, having seen you only for the last couple of years, gives me way more understanding of why you've had some of the results that you've had in particularly marketing and things like that, because actually you've been in the online space for an amazing period of time as well. So a few things to pull out on there first of all then. So what was the reason of transitioning from mortgages into financial planning? Kind of first question I have.
Yeah, so actually I didn't go into the financial planning space until fairly recently. I think there's a big difference in the industry at the moment between financial advice and financial planning, because financial advice is still very transactional based, i.e. I need a pension, I need some life insurance, I need a mortgage, I need a product to fix the solution or the problem that I'm in. Whereas financial planning is very much more about, it actually doesn't even involve financial products in some instances. It's more about building the plan, which for me makes complete sense, because you don't necessarily know what financial product you need until you know what your plan is. So financial planning is more about the life path, well, what do you want to achieve in life and what kind of things do you want, looking forward short-term and long-term. And actually scenarioing all of that out before you then sort of build in the financial products. So I didn't get into the financial planning space. I didn't actually know it even existed until literally a few years ago.
Okay, so you were into financial advice.
Yeah.
So what made you go through that initial transition? Because that's probably where most mortgage brokers listening to this would be thinking to themselves, I'm a mortgage broker now, quite like the idea of doing pensions and investments and moving. So what was it just natural progression? Or?
Yeah, for me it was just that challenge. I mean, I loved mortgage advice, and actually in many ways mortgage advice is a lovely area to be involved in, because there's generally always a good result at the end of it. You know, you're either saving people money by remortgaging, or you're helping them to move into their dream house. Like, it's a lovely profession, and you're not really having to sell anything. So for a lot of people that find that the struggle around the word selling, a lot of people struggle with that. And I think that in a mortgage capacity, you're not really selling. Yes, you're having to, you know, a good mortgage advisor will have a conversation about their protection needs. And that's where people can get a little bit thrown off, where they think they're selling them a protection product. But essentially, you know, when you get clients come back to you a few years later to say, thank you so much for putting that critical illness insurance in place, because I wouldn't be without it now. You know, it's not selling. You're just giving them what they need. But I think we just have this, you know, this tarnished brush sometimes in the industry that you're just a salesperson, you're going to flog them products. That's not actually true at all. It's, unfortunately, there are always going to be in every industry some people that do take that approach, but for the majority, that isn't the case. It's just getting over ourselves. It's not about selling, it's about helping that client with their needs.
Yeah, totally agree with that, without a shadow of a doubt. It's putting together the bespoke protection package and actually just making sure that your job as a broker in any sense of financial services really is to identify the shortfalls and make the client aware of them and paint that picture of what life could be like in the future if they don't have these things in place, isn't it, at the end of the day? So
yeah, I think sometimes it is a bit of semantics as well, but I think from a consumer perspective, like even just the word mortgage broker can put a lot of people off.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have to find, I think, a different way of getting our message out there in a way that does communicate that to our ideal client. Because, you know, sometimes it's a bit like estate agents, isn't it? You know, you hear this word and you think, oh gosh, you know, because of our environment and what we're told about certain professions. So I think sometimes we can be a little bit more mindful, I think, of how we're positioning ourselves in the market.
Yeah. And okay, so that's cool. So then now I'm really interested in your personal development kind of journey that you went through during that transition of completely, for one, amazing, because I hear so many mortgage brokers throwing out, and even business owners throwing out the statement, I don't have time. Well, you were employed, you were doing a side hustle, and you were a mum. Were you a mum of two at that time?
No, just one
That
at
was
that
just
time.
the one at that time. So anyone who says they haven't got time is BS, and they need to sort themselves out, because there's always time. It's just what you're prioritizing. And clearly you had a big priority around that side of it. But how much do you think personal development has then played a big journey, understanding, you know, your younger self and the impact that it's had on you today, as well as your, I was going to say addiction, but that's not the right word, was it? Your understanding of money and the impact that the relationship you had with it. That's better.
Yeah, I think the way I view personal development, I don't really see it as personal development. I just see it as almost like something you're passionate about. And I think if you can find that sweet spot of something that you're just genuinely interested in, then of course you're going to find time to do it, because you're so passionate about learning about it. It's a bit like, you know, if you listen to your favorite podcast or you read your favorite book, you find the time to do it because it's something that you love to do. So I think that's the hardest thing for a lot of people, is finding what is that thing that they love to do. And for me, I almost just feel like all the work that I do is my life's purpose. And I don't mean this to sound like really deep and really like woo-woo, but
I'm into all of that as well. Law of attraction and visualization, and I love all of that stuff. So
yeah, for me, you know, if I have any spare time, what do I want to do with that spare time? I want to help more people to become financially resilient. I want to help more people feel more confident, because I know it's life-changing, because it had a massive change and impact on me. So if someone said to me, go and learn a new language, personal development, I'd be like, yeah, I could do that, but I'm not motivated to do that. So I think we've got to find this motivation, and we've got to find a way of implementing it into the work, you know, into our life. I mean, and I have 2 children now, so I understand that time is a commodity, and we have to learn not how to manage time, because you can't manage time, but it's learning how to just prioritize what you're using your time for. And sometimes I think we forget actually how valuable our time is. So half an hour of my time is super valuable. So I think it is just managing how we prioritize, but really just thinking about lights you up, what makes you want to get out of bed. And I think that's much easier than thinking of it from a personal development perspective.
Yeah, and it's probably a better word would have been more around the self-awareness side of it. Clearly, you've got a massive amount of self-awareness, and you started to understand through the clothing aspect of things as to the impacts that was having on you as of today, and how it can affect other women in their relationship with money as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that from a progression perspective as well, finding something you're really passionate about is the first step. And then finding a way for it to work within your life is the second kind of step. I mean, for me, people have always said to me things like, how do you do it all? How do you manage everything? But I think when you've got that passion, you do just generally find time to do it. I mean, the biggest part, actually, one of the second biggest changes in my career was not just that moment of sitting on my couch and understanding that actually for once, rather than focusing on what everybody else was doing, so I would look to other people about what they were wearing, and I would look at somebody and think, they look amazing, they look really skinny and gorgeous. So I would try and model that. And of course I wasn't them. I didn't have the same body shape as them. And so that moment for me was about recognizing what was right for me. So, this kind of concept of comparisonitis is one of the most evil things in the world, because when we compare ourselves to everybody else, then all of a sudden our expectations on ourselves go right up here. And I think if you start the day sometimes with no expectations, that's better, because then you can't be disappointed. It's a bit like right now, having my children from homeschooling from home. I have no expectations of how that's going to go right now for me, because otherwise I'm going to have, I'm going to be disappointed. So I think it's about that, but also the second biggest change for me was when my second son was born. So when my first son was born, I had a really traumatic labour, which I won't go into, but it didn't end very well. I was knocked out under general anaesthetic. And I had a lot of postnatal depression issues because I didn't feel like my body was able to do what it should have done through childbirth. And I think a lot of women can potentially resonate with that. And so I almost felt really quite depressed really about that whole situation. And so when my second son was born, I had a complete normal natural delivery with him. But unfortunately, when he was born, he had an infection at birth, which was not picked up. So when he was 3 days old, we took him into hospital, and we were told there was a 50-50 chance that he was going to survive. And then at 5 weeks old, he then was diagnosed with bacterial meningitis. So there was one particular morning when he woke up, he was really not himself. He was fidgety. He didn't want to feed. He just wanted to sleep the whole time. And I remember this one particular morning when my friend had come over to do some baby hand casting sessions, where you get them to put their feet in clay. And he just wasn't himself that morning. And I kept saying to my friend, something's not quite right with him. And I thought I was just being a kind of an overprotective mum. And he was in the Moses basket in the bay window of the lounge. And it was my turn to kind of pick Thomas out of the Moses basket to put his hand into some clay. And when I picked him up, he just screamed blue murder at me. Didn't want to be picked up, didn't want to be touched. Wasn't himself. And so I said to my friend, but I'm going to quickly do this, and then I'm going to take him to the doctors because something's not right. And he had one of those baby grows on that covers your hands and covers their feet. So I peeled back this baby grow to put his hand into the clay and his feet, and his hands were like ice. And I remember thinking, well, it is October, it's pretty cold outside, but the heating's on. Why is he so cold? So I quickly did this hand casting, put him back into the Moses basket. And I said to my friend, do you mind leaving so I can take him to the doctors? And I rang the doctors, booked an appointment. And then I picked up the phone to my friend, who's a nurse, and I said, look, he's not right. He's not wanting to feed. He looks a bit pale. He's got really cold hands and really cold feet. And so she said, have you taken his temperature? And I said, well, no, because he's cold. So I've been kind of wrapping him up. And I took his temperature, and his temperature was 39.9. And for anybody who's got children, anything over like 38 is like either get the cowpole out or get him to the doctors.
Yep.
And so I immediately put the phone down. I put him in the car seat. I rang the doctors and said, I'm going straight down to A&E. Rang my husband and said, meet me at A&E. And literally within 20 minutes, his entire skin mottled. It all started to mottle. He came out with not a rash, but he came out with this just like blotchy skin. His breathing was very fast. He was very, very quiet. And again, that moment for me when I was on this wheelchair, I had Thomas in my arms and they wheeled me down into resuscitation. And I remember sitting there thinking, crikey, this is quite serious. And they admitted us into A&E. And it wasn't until 4 days later that they actually did some tests and diagnosed. They did a lumbar puncture, which is one of the most awful things that anybody can go through. And they then sent off these results to the Oxford laboratory and came back and said he had bacterial meningitis. But the thing for me in that moment wasn't the fact he had meningitis. It was the fact that the doctors that were doing all these tests kept using all this jargon. They kept saying sepsis. And I kept thinking, what the hell is sepsis? Well, I think I know what it is, but I'm not really sure how this relates to Thomas right now. And what that made me feel is I felt really out of control. I felt really stupid. I felt like I should know that sepsis is the biggest killer of newborn babies. I didn't know that. I didn't know that having cold hands and cold feet and not wanting to feed is a sign of meningitis, of sepsis. I didn't know any of these things. I always thought of meningitis as the cup test with the rash and potentially with older children, but I'd never associated it with newborn babies. And when I went back to work, having come out of hospital, I sat there thinking, how many people feel like this when they're going to see a financial professional, not understanding all this complicated jargon? And that, again, was the second most pivotal point in my life where I thought, no, do you know what? This isn't about financial products. This is about helping people to make better financial decisions. This is about helping people to understand their relationship to money. This is about helping people to get out of these debt cycles. People that are earning significant amounts of money that are overspending, that maybe have a status relationship with money where they're driven to try and impress other people. You know, they're buying flash cars, they're living in big houses trying to impress other people, or they're living in this debt cycle because they have an emotional relationship with money. Or for people that potentially are overgiving in their relationship to money. So therefore they're not charging enough for their services because they don't feel that they're deserving to have wealth. And that just opens up my whole world to the concept of how to help improve people's relationship with money.
Wow, again, that's like another big, obviously I've heard that story before and it's so true. But what an amazing journey you went on with your little boy, and he's okay now, I would assume.
Yeah, like we always say
child and everything.
Thing. Yeah, like he's always been, even in hospital, he would be smiling the entire time. Like he's just the smiliest, happiest boy. He's now 6, and yeah, luckily he's not had any adverse effects from meningitis. We hit it, got it quite quickly early on, and very lucky. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a father of 3, and I know kind of different kind of side of things. But for our second, we planned a home birth. And set up all in the kitchen, all that sort of stuff. And by 1 o'clock in the morning, the midwife was literally just a case of, right, this ain't happening. We need to get you to the hospital. And within about an hour and a half, it was full-blown C-section, the whole lot. And it was just like same kind of feeling as you. The doctors they do what they do, but you feel so out of control. And it's like headspace from one to the next thing. And no doubt you went through the thing where it's almost just like a conveyor belt of being rushed through to, this is what's happening. This is not really any why in terms of why you've got to do it. So I can get how you transitioned that into your business mindset as well.
Yeah, I mean, my experience of being in the hospital, there were 2 very pivotal people in the hospital at that time that had a massive impact on me. One was positive, one was negative. I had a nurse that looked after me, and she'd just come out of medical school. Didn't use any jargon. She was lovely. Every morning she'd come into my room and say, is there anything that you need? And that was all that she'd say to me. She was so supportive. And yet on the other side, there was a doctor that came into my room. I think he only ever came in once, actually, that I remember. And he came into the room. I had Thomas in my arms. At the time, they had to flush through his cannula to administer this antibiotics treatment that he was receiving. I was very lucky that he didn't have to go into intensive care. I was with him the whole time. But there was one particular day where the doctor walked in, didn't even say hello to me, walked into the room, started to get all of his equipment out to flush through Thomas's cannula. And as he started to flush through the cannula, Thomas started absolutely screaming. And I said to the doctor immediately, the cannula's coming out. It's not in the right place. You need to take it out and put a new one in. And he was on probably his 5th cannula at that point. And obviously with a baby, you know, they have very little veins, so they try and keep them as long as possible in, you know, because otherwise they run out of veins and they have to go in through their head or through their feet. And that's all he kept saying to me was, no, we've got to keep this cannula in because otherwise we're going to have to go into his head. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, like I definitely don't want that to happen. And so he kept pushing this syringe, kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And Thomas is screaming and screaming and screaming. And in the end, after me repeatedly saying, it's not in the right place, you need to take it out, he then said, oh yeah, the cannula's coming out, we need to change it. And I was like, well, yes, I've been telling you that for about 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But at the time, I actually then suffered with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of that one event when all I heard was Thomas's scream. And I'm standing there as a mum with him in my arms thinking, I can't do anything about this right now. I cannot take that pain away. I cannot do anything. I get quite emotional even talking about it now.
I can see
and
it.
The consequence for me was that when I got back home and I didn't have that support team around me, every time Thomas cried, it took me back to that one instant, that one moment. And that's what post-traumatic stress disorder is. It's that one moment that happens that causes a severe amount of stress that then we're then anchored back to. So I had to do a lot of therapy work around that one. And I didn't even know it was that one moment until I'd gone through this therapy. And again, for me, it really made me think about that doctor had no bedside manner. He didn't even say hello. He wasn't focused on me. He was focused on the end solution of getting this medication in Thomas as quickly as possible. And I totally get that. As a doctor, as a medical profession, that's his responsibility. But as a financial services professional, again, I sat back and thought, you know what, how often do we focus on the end result, on the products, so quickly enough that we don't actually even have the time to understand how our clients are thinking and feeling and behaving around money? And I would say that was the second most pivotal point in my life where I thought, no, I want to really help more people around this.
Yeah, amazing. I'm so glad he's okay now, and what a traumatic situation to have gone through. But it's clearly had, you know, like we're going through adversity at the moment, and there's lots of opportunity that comes as a result of that. And you found your passion out of such a negative time, and such a stressful time, no doubt, as well. But it's obviously had a big impact to the current day, to where you are now. So after that whole event with Thomas, and what happened next for you there to lead you where you are today then? Yeah,
so consequently, I was suffering with, I had really bad issues carrying my children in my pregnancy. So I had something called symphysis pubis disorder, which is basically where my pelvis had tilted in pregnancy. SPD they call it. I think I had the pronunciation slightly wrong there, but SPD. So when I went back into work, I couldn't actually sit down for very long without being really uncomfortable. And my boss at the time, typical, dare I say it, 55-year-old man in a suit who was coming up towards retirement, didn't want to support me. I have nothing against men, 55-year-old men in suits, by the way, but he very old school, typical of financial services, and he wouldn't support me in work, just wanted to get me signed off. I wanted to stay in work. And so consequently, I ended up resigning. I left. I had some conversations with some local IFA practices and said, look, how can I support your businesses? I had a couple of job offers on the table, and I thought, right, I'm going to leave. And so I did. I resigned. I set myself up as a self-employed IFA. I went into some local practices and just helped them with their power planning work, administrative work, business development, marketing, sales, etc. And it was at that time that I then discovered the whole world of lifestyle financial planning that I didn't even know existed prior to that point. And this is, I would say, an emerging side of financial services in the UK right now.
And just on that note, had everything up until that point been financial advice, as we spoke about earlier? Sorry.
Yeah, traditional financial advice.
Yep. Yeah, fine. Okay. So this was your experience, first step into planning world.
Yeah. So I started doing some research about people's relationships with money, and I got myself out of 30 grand's worth of debt by just looking at my relationship with money. And I began thinking, I wonder how many other people have been in this situation, and I wonder how I can use how I got myself out of debt to help other people. And so I just started doing some research, and I came across this concept of financial planning. And I reached out to a guy called Paul Armson, who runs an organisation called Back to Why, has a Back to Why conference every year for financial planners. And I messaged his PA and said, can I come to the conference? And she said, are you a financial planner? And I said, I'm a financial advisor. Is that the same thing? She's like, no, you need to be a financial planner to come to this conference. And I was like, oh, okay. So what do I need to do to become a financial planner? So, and I went through the typical CII route with my qualifications. I did the old FBC type CFA qualifications. I didn't go down the financial planning route qualification. I didn't even know it existed. And I think that was probably because I was sheltered in the banking sector, that typically the pathway into financial advice through the banking sector was financial advice, not financial planning. But there are two different types of qualifications. And so, or they're not now, but they used to be. And so I then started finding out more about financial planning and how this operated. I actually then was allowed to go to the conference, and I was just opened up to this whole world of a different way of helping clients with actually focusing on the plan rather than just the products. And that's when I just decided to start writing about my whole experience, that I think actually what at the root cause of money is a set of beliefs. So behind every financial situation, there's a set of beliefs, there's a set of thoughts, there's a set of emotions. And I just started writing about it. I set up the money panel. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it. I just set it up as almost like a blog.
What year were we in now?
Writing.
What year was this?
This was in 2017, January 2017.
Yeah.
Just started writing about money. I wanted to get a weekly blog out, but at the time I had 2 young children at home. My time was, focused on the children. So I just did blogs as and when I could, really, on an evening when the children were in bed. And I was still operating my online giftware business at that time. I was doing all the Christmas markets. I was doing some Facebook marketplace group events. And I kind of got to the stage where I was just so tired, and I wanted to take the giftware business to the next level, but I didn't have the time, or I really didn't have the time because I had 2 children at home. And so I then packaged that business up and I sold that to my next door neighbor, actually, who was looking for a new opportunity. And so her husband bought this business for her for her birthday. And she now runs that very successfully. So I got to that point in my life where I thought, right, I need to create a bit more time and start to reprioritize what I was doing. And as I started to write about money, I then started to do more personal development work around this whole world of the psychology of money. I started reading books, I was listening to podcasts, I did a financial coach qualification, and I just started to progress my knowledge. And it just became this ever-growing addiction, really. I couldn't get enough of this information. Every minute I had, I'd be reading about it, I'd be learning about it, watching YouTube videos. And of course, when I did my qualification, I was then sat with this qualification thinking, right, now I know how to help people. How do I grow my business? How do I monetize this? And then that led to the next part of the business.
What was the qualification that you did, the financial coach qualification? Because I can imagine there's people who are going to be interested in that.
Yeah, so I did this with a company called Wise Monkey, and this particular lady has been operating in the financial coaching space for quite some years. And actually, one of the things that we're doing this year is I'm actually now about to launch my own financial coaching training program.
Congratulations, nice.
For financial professionals, because which is actually going to complement very much the work that Wise Monkey are doing. So Wise Monkey have trained some incredible financial coaches in the industry, but to help consumers. And I really want to provide a platform to help financial planners to incorporate financial coaching, not just financial planners, mortgage advisors, financial advisors, into their existing practices, or do what I did and actually came away from the whole regulated side and build this as a completely separate business. I mean, I still am regulated. I still do a little bit of regulated work, but not very much at all.
So just for anyone who's listening then, and to clear it up a little bit, we've mentioned financial advisor, we've mentioned financial planner, and we've also mentioned financial coach. Can you distill the three because I've got an audience of business owners as well from my mortgage brokerage side. So what's the difference between all three?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And actually, one of the things that we did last year is we've just formed a new initiative in the UK called the Financial Wellbeing Initiative. So, and I'm one of the non-exec directors on the board, and I'm leading the stream of financial coaching. So what we're trying to do as an initiative is to actually understand how can we help the financial services profession to help their clients to be happier, not just wealthier. That's our kind of tagline. How can we help them to be focused more around financial well-being as much as we can, whilst also providing the financial expertise that we all offer to our clients. And so part of the IFW, the Initiative of Financial Wellbeing, is we're trying to gather together as many members as possible to create essentially an institute in the future where we can help more consumers around improving their relationship with money and helping them to be happier, not just wealthier. So as part of that, we're trying to understand some of the differences between a financial coach, a financial planner. I'd also argue there's another one in there around financial counselling and financial therapy, which is big in the US, but not so much in the UK. But if you think about it, a lot of what we talk about with financial coaching is about our relationship to money. And our relationship to money often stems right back through to our childhood beliefs. And some of that can be based, around traumatic experiences that have happened. So it does require some sensitivity. And for me, the differences between coaching, planning, advice, and therapy are almost like different levels. So financial therapy for me is about looking at people's some trauma perhaps that's being stored in our subconscious belief system that's having an impact on how we make decisions. Financial coaching for me is about practical steps, how to manage money, how to get out of debt, how to snowball debt, how to create a spending plan, how to give every pound a purpose, all of the practical steps. But then also we've got this element of coaching from a behavioural finance perspective. So many of your listeners may be familiar with behavioural finance. This is again another really interesting area about how human biases affect how we respond to different things. So for example, right now we've got the stock markets doing this. And what a lot of people will be feeling is fear and anxiety around that, because it's part of just a human bias. We feel pain twice as much as when we feel pleasure. It's called loss aversion. Yeah. We feel the pain twice as much.
For anybody who's listening as well. You can't see your hand movements doing the downward spiral.
Yes. So, when the markets are coming down, most people don't think this is an opportunity. Most people think, oh my goodness, my pension fund's just halved in value, because it's human nature to feel the pain more than we feel the pleasure of when the markets are going up. And so it's called loss aversion. Herd mentality is another one where we follow the crowd. Warren Buffett famously said, be fearful when the market is greedy and be greedy when the market is fearful. We have to try and do the opposite of what everybody else is doing. So if John Lewis suddenly slaps a sale banner on the front of the store, are you going to run towards it or away from it? Well, towards it, of course, because you're going to get everything cheaper. And it's the same with the stock market. But people don't have the confidence, and particularly women that I work with, don't have the confidence to understand the stock market. So that's kind of the behavioural bias side of things. And I think that fits into the financial coaching space, where we do need to understand and help a client to think about how are they being driven by their own thoughts and beliefs that maybe make them more prone to loss aversion or herd mentality and things like that. And then financial planning is about then putting the physical plan in place to understand people's life goals, their aspirations, their dreams, all the things that they want to do, and scenario out different versions of what that could look like. So that then you can then move up to financial advice, which is about making the decisions about, right, what financial products do I need to help me reach that plan? And the financial coaching bit, the behavioural piece, is, well, how do I stick to that plan? Because someone can build you the most amazing financial plan, and if you're not going to stick to it because you haven't got the right behavioural biases or habits in place, it's a bit like a workout program. So you can work with the personal trainer and build the most incredible program, but if you haven't got the right mentality, habits, motivation behind it, you're never going to do it anyway.
Yeah, without doubt. So this then leads me to the question that you're financial coaching is where your financial planning is where you're sitting now, or are you classifying yourself as a financial coach in that sense?
So I'm both. So I'm a regulated financial planner, but I do most of my work, 95, if not probably 99% of my work now is in the financial coaching space. So, and I'm trying to lead that in the industry.
Got it. Okay. So from that perspective then, taking that as the angle, because you know from a mortgage advice perspective, we charge a fee, and we charge a fee for someone who is applying for a mortgage, and that comes under the FCA. I'm a big believer, because particularly in my niche being self-employed business owners, that actually they need mortgage planning, because they need to think about how they're building their business. If they want to build their business and buy £1 million home, that's not going to happen in their first year of business. It's going to happen in year 3 and year 4. So actually working out for them and saying, right, if you want £1 million home, you're going to need this much deposit, this much income, working backwards effectively and starting with the end in mind, giving them the plan that they can then utilize to build their business. Now, I think this applies to the whole mortgage industry, in all honesty, for first-time buyers through to people who want to move home, through to investors. Would you agree?
Would I agree that the plan is needed?
Or that there is a differentiation in the mortgage industry between what we know now, because there is no mortgage planning in the mortgage industry. It's just all mortgage advice. So do you think this correlates to mortgage advisors acting more as mortgage planners going forward?
That's a really good question. The way I see it is that as a mortgage advisor, you're helping the client with one specific area of needs, but we know that that one specific area of need relates to other areas of their life. This kind of holistic view, isn't it? So I think as a mortgage advisor, if you can, the opportunity I see for that is to think about how you can add more value added services to your business. Either if that's because you want to be forward thinking, or you want an opportunity to maybe sell your business in a few years. It's thinking about how can you make your business stand out from the crowd. And I think this is an opportunity to potentially be working with a financial coach, perhaps, or maybe learning how to bring some of these skills and services into your practice. So that, for example, if you want to think about this intergenerational wealth piece, that if you're helping to serve a first-time buyer right now, or you referred a client from one of your existing clients who's got, a younger child who's getting on the property ladder for the first time. This intergenerational wealth piece, I think, is really fascinating. And if there's a way that you can think about adding value-added services to your business, I think that's a really exciting opportunity to be using this concept of financial well-being and holistic planning in a way that actually complements your business rather than taking away from your business. I think a lot of people are fearful about, well, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to build another service into my business. And I totally get that. But I think this is an opportunity to just think a little bit outside the box into how could you make your business stand out? How could you make your services stand out? Could you offer, for example, I don't know, like a webinar service or online workshops with your clients to just talk about some of these areas that do actually have an impact on their ability. For example, if you've got somebody in their early 20s that's struggling to save for a mortgage deposit, the likelihood is it's probably because they've got some kind of relationship with money that's holding them back. They're overspending, they're in debt cycles. And I think if we can help those people more, then ultimately that's going to lead to more business for you anyway.
Well, it's the same as the number of years. I used to specialise when I first went self-employed. The last company I worked for was in adverse credit. So I did that up until the credit crunch when it all fell off a cliff. And the amount of people, and even I know mortgage brokers will still see it now. We don't see a lot, but they'll remortgage, they'll clear their debts. And then 2, 3, 5 years later, oh no, I'm going to cut my credit cards up. And they come back again and it's like the debts are back where they used to be. And that's missing the trick of, yes, you can just remortgage them, but they're in a money cycle that needs addressing and needs supporting. So for mortgage brokers that are interested in adding this additional arm then, if 99% of your work is in the money coaching space, do you mind me asking how you charge for that? Because we only know, mortgage industry is very transactional. It's, I'm doing a mortgage, I'm charging a fee. For some, they still bloody don't. I'm doing a life insurance policy, and then it's kind of, see you later, see you in a couple of years. Whereas I'm more about the relationship and the ongoing, which I think is really key. So how do you build this model of coaching into your into your business now, particularly with the fact that you're not doing the transactional stuff as much?
Yeah, sure. So, and just on that note, I think one of the things you said there, Gary, is about understanding how you can help clients to get out of those debt cycles. I think is a great value add to your service. You know, you could learn how to have conversations with clients and using tools and exercises to understand what their relationship is with money, so that then you're not, you know, not necessarily having to. I mean, I guess there's two sides of this, isn't it? So one side is like, well, but then, you know, you make good money from people who are potentially in that situation, and without that meaning to sound callous.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
You know, that the industry does make money from that, but actually, from a value add perspective, I think just to understand how that all actually works and helping people would really add a relationship strengthener to your business. But in terms of how I charge for my coaching business, so I initially started working with people on a one-to-one basis, charging very small amounts of money, doing quite a lot of pro bono work in the early days. And then I very quickly moved to a model of one-to-many, not one-to-one. And for me, that was because partly I wanted to try and prioritize my time. Obviously, I wanted it to be a profitable business. Otherwise, it's not a business, it's just a hobby. And I then very quickly moved to organizing group online programs, but interactive programs. And then I started building some mastermind programs. I now have my Money Circle membership, which is where we offer a community where we produce content every single month. We produce money success kits. We have guest experts coming in talking about different subjects. We have like a panel now of experts that we bring in regularly to talk about all sorts of things around the concept of financial well-being. And they pay a monthly low-cost membership for that. Then we have obviously the podcast, In Her Financial Shoes podcast. So we have different levels of services at different price points, so that if people don't have any money to spend, that's fine. They can come into a Facebook community, they can listen to the podcast. We do a 5-day challenge called the Plug Your Money Leaks Challenge, which is very, very successful. We've run that 5 times now over the last 12 months. So we have that. We have different services and price points and levels that people can come into our space so that we can support them in different levels.
Yeah, nice. And that's where the coaching space is completely different to the industry that we're kind of in, from the coaching angle. But it's that low free value in, i.e. the podcast that I do, that then leads into the community, that then leads into the low value item or the tripwire or whatever you want to call it, into your kind of core product. But I definitely think there's something that mortgage advisors could add a string to their bow to just be seen as more than a mortgage broker. And whether that is, as you say, getting qualified around the mortgage, the financial coaching stuff, or whether just linking with a financial coach and adding that as an arm to the business.
Yeah, I think
it's so key.
I think that's it. There's going to be people listening to this thinking, no way, I don't have the time for that. I don't have the desire. And that goes back to my original point about, if the passion's not there, then, you know, you just know it's not going to be right for you. If you're sitting here thinking really intrigued about this, then in my mind, there's 2 ways to deliver this. One is that you learn how to do it yourself, and you learn how to use aspects of financial coaching to make your business more valuable than it currently is. And the second way is to then maybe outsource that and work with a financial coach, so that the financial they come in as an external expert to help your clients, and that could just be a value add additional service that you could offer to them. So that's the opportunity I see is either one of those 2 things. Yeah, I
think it's a great idea. I think it's a brilliant model. You know, we're all in and involved around money. I think most mortgage advisors, my perception, and I could be wrong, would be that if they're going to link to a financial advisor, it's going to be for referring pensions and investments, etc. But definitely your professionals, your business owners, your high earners, and even those people who are in a vicious cycle or can't save for a deposit, perfect additional add-on to the services that you're offering, along with the solicitors, the broker fee, the life insurance. You know, you want to add that. I like the holistic view of a client rather than just being, I'm doing mortgages and that's it.
Yeah, I think most mortgage advisors are the same. You know, that they do what they do because they love helping clients, and if they can find other ways to help them, they would be very open to that. I think, like you say, it's just managing that between your personal development needs, what you're passionate about, how do you make yourself stand out above the crowds.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think we do need more women in the industry as well. The ratio is still massively heavily weighted in relation to men, but I think it's a good opportunity for ladies to come into the industry. And as you say, you've focused on your niche around ladies. What made you do that? Because I'm a big fan of a niche. What made you focus on niching to women specifically?
You know, it's interesting. I mean, I mentor guys, and as I said, the financial coaching program that I'm about to launch will be for anybody. But from a woman's perspective, what I find really interesting is that when a lot of people think about who their ideal client is, they always spend about 6 months thinking about who's my ideal client, and they always come back to, this is my experience, themselves. Absolutely. and that's kind of what I ended up doing. I just started working with women. I'd always worked with women in the personal styling space, and I just thought, I know how to attract people like me because I know what I like. I know what magazines I'm reading. I know where I'm hanging out. And so I didn't make it overcomplicated for myself. I just started with myself. Yeah. Probably a bit lazy, but I then found that the more people that were me 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I know I could help them because I'd been in their shoes. That's why we call the podcast In Her Financial Shoes, because I've been in their shoes. I know what they can do. And being a professional expert as well, I've then got the extra kind of credibility that I've also got the professional qualifications and experience to back that up as well. So I'm not just, for me, it was never about loading up as many qualifications as possible, because in reality, people don't really care about that. In my experience, people care about your personal story, your journey, because actually your journey is much more powerful than any textbook or qualification.
Yeah. And you started with blogging, you now do podcasting. You said you're doing some videos as well.
Yeah, so we do probably more video than anything else. We try and do 5 or 6 videos a week on Facebook predominantly, but we're trying to repurpose these and get them out onto different platforms. I'm going to take some advice from you on YouTube, Gary, for this. But yes, so we do a lot of video content. We do 2 podcasts a week now. And that's pretty much all I do, is just content creation. Content creation is a funny thing. Can I just say, for anyone who's wanting to produce content, the more you produce, the more infectious it becomes. And when in the early days, I was like, I'm not a writer. And I would tell myself, I'm not a writer. I can't write anything. But when I was telling myself that, then my brain was looking for evidence that I was not a very good writer. But actually, I am a very good writer. I just needed to find the time and the right subject to write about. And the more you start down this road, I mean, everything now is a content opportunity. I walk down the street, for goodness sake, and there's a content opportunity in what I'm learning or what I'm hearing or what I'm talking to my children about. Everything is a content opportunity. It just becomes this kind of obsessive beast once it gets started.
Definitely. And I'm exactly the same. What started as, video for me in 2016 is now, I would say, 70% of my job is content production in some way, shape or form, or related around social media in some way or another. Because I've done the whole buying lead scenario in the background, and I don't intend on doing it again. And I think the world is going the way that, we're going in relation to podcasting, blogging, video, being omnipresent on all channels, creating communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is all about, one of the things that Daniel Priestley talks about, for those of you who've not heard of Daniel Priestley's work, he talks about being oversubscribed. His book Oversubscribed is fantastic, and Key Person of Influence is great. But because actually what we're talking about is creating your own assets. Because, yes, you can buy leads off other businesses, and sometimes that's the right thing to do. But also we want to be creating our own assets. And particularly in a digital world right now, we need to be open to that opportunity.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah, and I did Key Person of Influence back in 2016. It's how I write my book, The Self-Employed Mortgage Guide. That was all part of that, and it's that whole journey. I love Daniel and follow his stuff. I've seen he's actually bringing out a new version of Oversubscribed today because of the scenario that we're in and around this coronavirus. So it's mentors. And just on that point then, how valuable do you think mentors and coaches are in terms of building and growing your business?
Yeah, hugely. I've had a few different mentors over the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's probably my biggest business expense has been investing in mentors. I think it is important to find the right type of mentor at the right time. But I would also say I probably pushed myself out of my comfort zone quicker than I thought I was ready for. So my first mentor, I remember going to an event, it was a lady called Jojo Graham. I remember going to this event and thinking, I'm not going to sign up to anything. And me and my friend were like, let's hold ourselves accountable. We're not going to sign up for anything. By the end of it, we'd invested £1,000, which for me at that time was a lot of money. I had to sell some shares to do that. And that was the right thing for me to do at that time, because it was tipping me outside of my comfort zone, outside of my boundary. And it did feel like it was too early. But I would say that was the best decision I ever made. But you have got to, it is important, I think, to find the right mentor.
Yeah. Are you a fan of the whole coach, no experience, but knows the coaching skills? Or would you rather have someone who's been there and done it in terms of where you want to take your business forward, or both?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, I was drawn to personality actually more than anything else. So my first mentor was a woman, but she had quite a masculine energy about her. In other words, she was very kind of an action taker. Now I'm an action taker, so I wanted somebody to kind of push me as an action taker. I have also worked with mentors that are more kind of softer and more of that kind of feminine energy. And it didn't work for me because it was a bit, well, but I just need to get some stuff going, otherwise I feel frustrated.
Yeah.
And then I've worked with men, with male mentors, and again, it's a whole nother dynamic. They think, men think differently to women. So I think it's probably a combination of personality, gut feel, and intuition. What feels right. I think absolutely it needs to be somebody that's ahead of where you are, so that you can learn from their mistakes, learn what worked for them, what didn't work for them. But I think sometimes you just have to go with your intuition and just take that decision, take that leap. And ultimately there'll always be things that you learn, things that you don't learn, and things that you'll learn differently from other people. So I think it's just intuition, I think, is probably the biggest thing.
Definitely. Yeah. I totally agree with that. If you want somebody who's going to hold you to account, then you go and get a coach who doesn't necessarily have the experience. But if you want to learn through someone else's experience and learn what not to do, then you get a mentor, because you won't get the accountability. But definitely go on personality. It's for me, it's about making sure that somebody's like you. I'm an action taker. I want to get stuff done. If I had somebody who was slow paced, didn't give me kind of a little bit of a to-do list or anything like that, I don't need the accountability, because if I've got 5 things to do, I'll go and get them done.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Knowing what works for you is important.
Yeah, if you're not an action taker, maybe if you're a planner, so you can plan. Like the irony of a financial planner, I'm not particularly great on structure and planning for myself.
Yeah.
So I need someone that's probably a little bit more analytical in that perspective to kind of balance that out in me. If someone gives me a list of things, like go and do this, this, and this, I'll just go and do this, this, and this. But some people may be the opposite. They may not be that natural action taker, in which case to work with someone who is an action taker would be a good fit, I think.
Yeah, perfect. So thank you very much indeed for your time today. I think it's been really valuable and given loads of people some insights and ideas, without a shadow of a doubt. If people want to come and learn more, or have money issues that they want to overcome, or want to find out more about financial coaching or anything along those lines, where's best to come and find you, Catherine?
Yeah, sure. So I have 2 websites. The main one I would come to would be themoneypanel.co.uk. Or you can come over to my personal site, which is catherinemorgan.com. Either of those 2 would be the best place to come and find me. Obviously, we've got all of our social media accounts: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc., YouTube. But the best place would be to come directly to the website, themoneypanel.co.uk.
And also the podcast, because on the podcast you talk about money issues and stuff, don't you, as well? So
yes. So the podcast is called In Her Financial Shoes. We're kind of a year into the podcast now, 35,000 downloads. We reached number 3 in the charts. on launch. So yeah, we do 2 podcasts a week to help people. So it's a great place to start.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time. My final question is always, this is the Mortgage Pro podcast. I called it Pro because perseverance leads to results, which creates opportunity. What does Pro mean to you?
Ooh, on the spot question. Love it. What does Pro mean to me? Oh, you put me on the spot, Gary. What am I going to say? I would say, what does Pro mean to me? The first thing that comes to mind is it's about progress, not perfection.
Nice.
So when you think about the concept of being a professional, I don't actually think we ever get to that level that we ever aspire to be. It's about progress, not perfection.
Yeah, amazing. And that comes back to what you said at the right at the very beginning, is don't focus on the end result. Just focus on actually where, don't focus on the plan or the outcome, actually have the plan in place and just progress 1% improvements every time.
It's the small steps.
Yeah.
Small steps, big wins is what is the headline on my podcast. It's small steps, big wins, because actually it is more about progress. Just what is the next best step, and then what's the next best step, and then what's the next best step.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. I think that's an excellent way to end. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Catherine. And I'll look forward to seeing you online again in the not too distant future, no doubt.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks. You take care.
Cheers.